people who are listening to this are probably sophisticated retail users, but most people are kind of like my dad. Like
Mhm.
he gets like the high level, but he's not gonna, dig deep, and he can't really do due diligence on like, what the best whatever. And so like people count on institutions, although the nature of Bitcoin, of course, is against like central banks or to have an alternative, but you still need kind of financial institutions, to build out that system. Just as financial institutions need to be fluent in, Bitcoin investing and stuff. So that I think El Salvador, although it did get started with like this kind of retail side and like, hyper Bitcoinization, it didn't really go down that side. But as far as I know, El Salvador still has their Bitcoin. It's netted them gains.
Mhm.
Bukele went through a lot of kind of ridicule over the years, and he came out ahead. And
Yeah,
I
I think he's had the last laugh at this point.
definitely, yeah, and I mean, we're even just getting started. Like, I mean, I imagine Bitcoin's going to keep going up. I'm not financial advice, but I feel like there's more left in it. So I think it's going to be a very wise investment.
Mhm.
And now, like we're talking about, strategic reserve in the U.S. and other countries too. Like this is, yeah, I think Bitcoin is a very I think it has a lot of, it might not be hyper Bitcoinization in the way that people imagined, like how Trump was buying a hamburger. Like
Mhm.
that might not be like where it actually plays out, but it might even play out in arguably, I would say, a more important venue as being a strategic reserve currency for the
Yeah, I mean,
world, which
I
is
definitely see nation states coming in, wading into the pool and adding it as, a treasury reserve asset. And the thing about Bitcoin is it's so many different things to so many different people, and it has all these fundamental characteristics that somebody who's in Bitcoin, who's in El Salvador on lives in Bitcoin Beach can use that for daily purchases as money right on an L2 or something, and nation states can put it on their balance sheets, right? Companies can put it on their balance sheets. Someone like you
yeah.
and I can add it to our portfolio and have it as a sort of like a long term savings account, right? Where we know we're not going to get debased. So same thing with your dad, right? He could add it to his portfolio, and I'm sure he already has if you're his son. So
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah, definitely. And the fact I didn't have to talk him into it. He kind of learned. And in fact, over the holidays, my brother's also in finance, and my sister in law runs a hedge fund. And I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna send dad some Bitcoin every month for his savings. And my
mhm.
brother's like, yeah, but no, I don't think he's gonna understand how to do that. Like, it's technically hard. And I'm like, no, no, no. Like, dad's been doing this for like 2, 3 years
Yeah.
on his own. In fact, he asked me how to create wrapped IBTC, and
Mm,
then I'm like, okay, dad, I'm gonna have to like like kind of like give you a longer explain, but he can still figure it out. So yeah, but I think what you said about institutions holding it on their balance sheet and corporations, I
mhm.
think that's, I mean, obviously I'm biased because I only talk to institutions for the most part, but I think that's where this is going,
Yeah.
because it just has novel security characteristics that even ETH doesn't have.
Mhm.
Um, and that it's in a special place. Plus the whole mining network. You
Yeah, it
guys
adds
have,
that.
sounds like, a lot of miners. I have
Yeah.
a couple miners, but just the fact that anyone can participate in that mining network
Yeah, you
is
can plug
very
right in.
cool too. So
I
it's
think it's proof of work is an interesting concept. It's this idea that that adds this cost of production to the asset. It adds this security element. And anybody can permissionlessly participate, right? And the miners ultimately, the miners and the nodes work together and basically keep the network safe and control the network. It's very different than proof of stake, right? With Ethereum, and
yeah,
again, I have exposure to all these different assets, but there Ethereum lost something special when it made that swap from proof of work to proof of stake. And now I think proof of stake is it's the status quo of the system that already exists, right? Like those who have the power and have the stake, right? The more stake you have, the more essentially control you have in a lot of ways, right? So with proof of work, it doesn't matter how much Bitcoin the United States government buys or how much Michael Saylor buys. That gives them no more control than anybody else, right? It gives them
yeah,
the same amount of one node, one CPU, one vote. Essentially, they have no more control just because they own the asset. And I think there's something very powerful about that message, right? It's kind of the fairest the fairest best system we have, right? Maybe it's not perfect, but it's better than the status quo.
yeah, definitely. And I heard something like Abu Dhabi wants to own like 15% of global hash rate. And so it's actually the mining that is becomes strategic, like ownership and wealth and whatever is great, but the control of mining policy, like that ends up being what where nation states can compete. So
Mhm.
I think, yeah, I just it's a very cool, yeah, like you
Yeah.
said, it's the best technology for, you know, people have the, you know, when I got into it too, people are asking me like, what, you know, well, but it, you know, uses so much electricity and blah 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 and pollution. It's, yeah, but what value does it provide?
Mhm.
And I think people, and it took me a while to understand, the
Yeah.
value of Bitcoin is security. It provides
Yeah.
security
What
of
is what
assets.
is the value of a globally decentralized permissionless money that anybody in the world who doesn't have access to a bank account or doesn't have access to identification or lives in a third world country or lives under an authoritarian regime or just doesn't want to get excluded from the global community of, countries, right, at the country level, right? Even like, there's no sanctions with Bitcoin. There's no, you know what I mean? Like if you control the mining hash, like, you can make sure your blocks, if you have 1% or 2% of the global miners, right, you can guarantee that your payments are going to get into those blocks, right? You might, like when you said, did you say the Middle East, they want to control 15%, or was it Dubai?
Abu Dhabi,
Abu
yeah,
Dhabi. Yeah, yeah. I
15%.
mean, I've
Yeah.
got miners in Abu Dhabi, right? We've got miners over there, so you know, I've got miners all over the world, right? It's like there's this game theory behind the network where it's like this arms race where everybody's competing, and
Mhm.
you know the miners are seeking out the lowest cost energy, which just so happens to be green energy, just because green energy produces, it's once you set it up, that solar panel or whatever, it just sits there and it produces energy,
Mhm.
right? And the people that are deploying that infrastructure, they need a way to monetize it, right? And what better way than somebody who's going to come and buy your energy 24/7, right? So it's just kind of a match made in heaven there. But yeah, every country is
Yeah.
going to aspire. I think it's going to become strategically important to have some of that mining infrastructure in your country, right? and that
Yeah.
and that makes it so not only no one country or one place in the world is going to control all of that, right?
Yeah, yeah, and you pointed out kind of the people who benefit from this, of course, institutions and corporations and so on, and they're, they have a profit motive, and that's a big part of it, and we focus on that, but who also benefits are the people in third world countries, where it's like, what's the value of not losing all your
Mm,
money?
yeah,
Like in Argentina, three times in a
yeah.
row, there's people who have seen all their savings be literally stolen by their
Venezuela,
government.
Zimbabwe. I mean, it's
um,
just the story is as old as time, right? These fiat currencies eventually, historically, always fail, right? At some point, there's mismanagement, and there's a lot more of it than people expect. So, you know,
Yeah,
a way to
yeah,
park your savings in an asset, in a money that has to follow a rule set, that how many coins are ever going to exist. This concept of absolute scarcity, that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins. I think that's a powerful thing. That's a powerful concept. And I think in 2025, my biggest prediction for this year and the next is I think nation states are going to teach the world what absolute scarcity actually means, right? Because I don't think
mhm,
there's really not many things that are absolutely scarce, not many assets
mhm.
that are absolutely scarce. And I think Bitcoin is one of those. It is the first discovery of that concept of absolute scarcity, and people just don't understand that. People don't quite get it, and I think that even after 15 to 20 years of Bitcoin being the best performing asset in all of human history, I think we're still very early. Many people still don't understand, but that network will show you. It will reflect that scarcity in price, which will create this viral feedback loop, which we've seen over and over and over again. And I think when
Yeah,
once nation states wade into that pool, it's going to be a different ballgame.
yeah, definitely, definitely. So yeah, so long story short, that's why, I mean, AI was like the coolest thing, and I think still has is
Mhm.
one of the top three coolest things. But the other one is Bitcoin specifically, and maybe I'll do a next company where I combine the two interests. But
Mhm.
anyway, I was like, I gotta like study into this thing.